Hello there, guys. I'm back with a class 2, and this class 2 is going to be devoted to the right hand, or the kind of the right portion of your playing. And this is actually going to sequence into another video that goes over different bowing styles. But I felt that I needed to cover this one first to be able to kind of segue into that. So this one, again, I don't want to preach to the choir because I'm sure that many of you guys have, perfectly fine bow holes and arms and stuff. But I encourage those who are watching to look at the whole thing and then, and see if you can use any of this information. But the thing with mariachi is it's so easy to get wrapped up within the passion of the music. Because it's fun and it's incredible and it's deep. But again, we also need to keep in mind we can't lose focus of the actual technique, because that's what's going to allow that passion to be able to sing through, rather than distract the audience with bad tone or intonation problems, or scratchiness or what have you. So that's kind of what you want to consider while you're watching this video. The most successful performances come from a balance between the passion and the technique of it all. And so when we're talking about the bow hand, we want to make sure that essentially the classical hold is really the best one that there is. And the thing is that I see so many young mariachis with versions of it that come from just not paying attention to it, essentially, and just kind of jumping into the music right away. And the bow hold is something that looks, can look so simple, and you don't even realize that you're not necessarily doing it correctly or not doing it as good as you could be. And that's really the thing, because it's just one little tiny difference between this and this, and many of you may not even have seen that change, and that has all the difference in your control. So very quickly, I'm just going to go over basic bow hold. Thumb, okay, goes in the space between the grip and the frog. Okay, it doesn't go in here. Okay, it goes in that grip right there. All right, fingers just slouch over, rest the hand, and then pinky down on its tip. Okay, now a lot of you will look at your bow hold and, oh, that's what I do, but possibly not, because once you start playing, you may change the grip a bit, and I see a lot of this, which is almost backwards. Okay, and then even kind of straight down. Basically, any poor position of holding the bow is going to stiffen your hand, and you don't want a stiff hand, because it's almost like having pipes or like steel bars as your shocks on a car. Okay, shock absorbers are essentially going to be spring-like. Okay, they're going to be fluid. You're going to be able to move very, very fluid, and anything that stiffens, okay, that's going to be a very bumpy and uncomfortable and painful ride. Likewise, on the bow, same thing. So anything that stiffens your hand is not going to be a good thing. So when you're too straight or almost backwards, that stiffens your hand, and then you're only going to be able to move from your elbow and your shoulder, which when you want to get faster and cleaner, okay, or you want to get more fluidity and cleanliness between longer notes, you're going to have a very difficult time with a stiff bow hold. Okay, or if you want to play with more volume or stronger, like on sones, you're going to get scratchier sounds. You're not going to actually be able to hear notes, okay, per se. And that's what we want, right? We want notes to happen on the violin, because that's what's going to keep your bow straight. All right. If your fingers are stiff, and so all you have to move are your shoulders and your shoulder and your elbow, okay, then automatically your bow's going to be doing, now that's a little bit extreme, but that's essentially what's going to be happening. And what happens when the bow moves sideways on the strings? There's no sound at all. Okay, so then Okay, you're not going to get a good straight tone that comes from being able to move the fingers and the wrist. Okay, so first I see a lot of this. Okay, now this looks all right, and actually this is very similar to a version of another classical hold. Okay, it's very similar, but the difference is though is that this part right here, the pinky, is stiff. Okay, so once the pinky is stiffened out, okay, or like this, I see sometimes a lot of like this. Once the pinky is stiffened out, your hand is no longer fluid. Okay, so make sure you have a curved pinky. The other thing that I see a lot of, thumb. You could be doing this. This looks great from the front, and then all of a sudden from the back, if you look at my thumb, okay, again, stiff. Okay, loss of fluidity, loss of control in your acute motions. Okay, your thumb has got. Oh, trying to get the angle here. Your thumb has got to be curved. Okay, remember you want to be fluid with your bow. Okay, very good. The other thing is you don't have to grasp onto the bow like a rubber chicken. Okay, essentially a good bow hold, you're gonna be able to balance between the pinky and the thumb. Okay, that means that you're not in desperate need of feeling like the bow is gonna fly out of your hand. Okay, if you're feeling like you have to grasp onto the bow because it's flying out of your hand, that means that you don't feel in control of your instrument, and you need to always feel in control of your instrument. That's the way that we sound our best, is when we're comfortable playing. So, try this exercise and get used to it, and that will kind of get you out of the habit of really holding onto your bow. Because obviously when you play, yeah, you're gonna tense your fingers a little bit, because that's, you can't play like that, it will go flying. But this at least helps you to develop that confidence that, wait a second, I'm not gripping onto my bow. Okay, what I am doing though is balancing it and controlling it with these fingers, not holding onto it for dear life. Okay, so that's the part on bow control. The next section that I'm going to go into is your right arm. Thanks. All right, guys. This portion is going to be on the bow angles. Okay, and for this video, I'm actually going to sit like this so that you can see all the angles. But as you know, as we all know, obviously you have different angles. You can look at your bridge and you can see them all. Very quickly, I'm going to go through them. It's just 1 on the G string, 2 on the D string, 3 on the A string, 4 on the E string, and then of course we have the in between. Okay, which are the double stops between G and D. That's 5. D and A, that's 6, and A and E, that's 7. Now these come in very useful. You always want to keep in mind, where you're hanging out on the instrument as far as your part. Third violin, you're going to be hanging out a lot here. Second violin in the middle, and of course, first violin, you're going to be doing a lot on the E string. A. And then of course, depending on what you're playing, there's a lot of songs that have a pretty good spread of everything for everybody. And then depending on the speed or the function of the song that you're doing, you also want to keep these levels in mind. So if you're hanging out a lot on the G string, okay, you need to make sure that you're up at the angle that you need to be. Now, why is this so important? Because I see many young students, okay, when they're up on the G string, they tend to drop their elbow like this, especially if they're coming from a higher string and then they cross over, and then look at what happened to my elbow. See how it's dropped and out of line? Now my leverage is completely gone, and actually, well, not completely gone, my leverage is coming down from underneath. And really the higher ground is the better of the two, because you're going to be able to apply your pressure from above and then come out with a cleaner, more powerful stroke that way. The opposite problem, a lot of players, tend to kind of try and look big, or they're just not really paying attention. They don't realize that they're doing it. But on the E string, their elbow is up this way. And remember, this is a very weak string. So when you're coming from that high above, that's, it's very easy to get that nasty crunch in there that we don't want. Essentially, you can look at it, it's very simple actually to look at it like this. The elbow and the arm should be in the a general line with the bow. always. Okay, so you should be able to put like a piece of cardboard or like a slab on top here and be able to kind of carry it with you throughout. Okay, so everything moves together. Everything moves together on its own different angle, and that way you can get a better sound because your leverage is coming from the right spot. Um, Now, where does this come in handy? Um, well, you got to think about if you are going to be doing something with a lot of singing tones and stuff, okay? You want your arm to be straight all the way across, okay? Okay? And so you get that nice transition from string to string. Okay, but if you're going in between notes that are really fast, say like on two different strings, which happens a lot, and we want them clean, we want them precise. That means your movements here have to get very acute. And so the way to do that is obviously you don't want to have to go in between two strings, okay, using the most basic levels, okay, which is this one and this one. You want to use an in-between level, which are your double stops. So we have that one. So everybody knows this one, right? Okay, we've all heard it, or we've all at least heard it, right? If not know it. So the beginning to that solo starts off right away with going in between two strings very quickly. So am I going to go and use these two different levels? No. Listen to the difference from the first one and that one that I just played, and it doesn't make any sense to use, you're flapping, you're going to fly away pretty soon. Okay? So you want to be very acute, and the only way to do that is, of course, to choose the in-between level, and you're going to be rocking back and forth, okay? And so your shoulder and your elbow aren't going to be working as much, okay? And again, this is where your bow hand comes into play, and you can be really fluid here, and you're going to be doing almost little circles in between the two strings, okay, as opposed to flapping, okay, which is too much work, and eventually you're going to do damage to your shoulder. So keep that in mind. And as far as the angles, I mean, really pay attention to them. They're going to help your playing tremendously. And eventually, you won't even have to think about it while you're doing it. You'll just do it. But get into the habit of if you don't do it now, try and realize where you're at. Practice in front of a mirror, okay? And the next portion, or the next class or the next section of this particular class is going to be on bow usage and division. So stay tuned. All right, guys. This third portion is going to be on your bow usage and division. And this is kind of going to segue into the actual next part of the entire class, which is going to be a completely separate video on the actual different strokes of the bow. But this one is going to help you to kind of lead into that, okay? But to do this third portion of this particular class, or this portion of the class, you really need to understand the first two parts of this video, which were the bow hold and the levels of the strings and the angles. Okay, once you have those two down, and they should more or less come second nature to you, then when you're applying to your music, then that's when really one of the only things that should be going through your mind, as far as your right hand is concerned, is just where you're going to be at in the bow and how you're going to strike the string at where you're at on the bow. Okay, so the bow divisions, okay, whole, half, third, quarter, or touch point, okay, and by touch point I'm talking about just striking, okay, and then where you're going to be at on the bow, upper, okay, middle, or at the frog, the lower, okay. And then how are you going to combine those two? Okay, well, we're going to use half the bow up at the top, or we're going to use touch point at the frog, or touch point in the middle. And a lot of that's going to depend on the speed of the song, or depend on the kind of the emotional personality type aspects of the song. uh, do whatever you need to do that will get the main idea across of the song. Be always sensitive to what the music is kind of telling you to do. And a lot of times there's going to be multiple ways to interpret it. So, but again, these are just considerations. So again, whole, half, third, quarter, or touch point of the bow divisions. Okay, and then whether it's going to be in the upper part of the bow, the middle part of the bow, the lower part of the bow. Okay, I encourage you to go back to the very beginning of this video to kind of look at least my interpretation of that tune, and because I chose that particular song because it has so many different layers to it. There's legato sections. There's string changes, very quick string changes. There's a spiccato section, touch point section. So it has a lot of different variety. It's a kind of a paso doble polka mix type of thing, And those are always very I guess kind of more orchestral in nature, I guess, but they have a lot of varieties and changes, and those are especially good to be able to take in your bow usage considerations. Okay, so try and apply them to a common one. A more common one that a lot of groups do is Sangre Mexicana. That's a great one to apply this stuff to. It has the completely different sections that will allow you to choose completely different bow motions and completely different bow usages and places and stuff like that. So I encourage you to really try and apply these to those polkas. Jesucita is another one. 3 completely different sections that are, or 4 completely different sections that are really great to be able to apply this stuff to, okay? And then the other thing to consider is and this happens all the time in mariachi, is avoiding the overuse of your bow arm and your shoulder and improper movements. Overusing your bow arm is something that may, I guess it looks big, it looks great on stage, but be careful, because that you may be seeing somebody using what they have, but it's not necessarily the same as when you do it. Okay, because they have already gauged and they already kind of know where they're at. I mean, if you're looking at a professional, then they have it gauged, or maybe they don't. I mean, who knows? You never know. What you want to look for is concentrate on your own playing, and do you sound good or not? You're always gonna start out by imitating what you see and all that kind of stuff, and do that. That's great, because that's what's gonna drive your passion. That's gonna drive. But eventually, start listening to yourself and see whether or not you like the sound that's coming out. Okay. Remember, everybody is gonna look and sound different when they play. So eventually, you're gonna have to start focusing on yourself and not trying to be, échale ganas all the time. We need to make sure that you have a nice sound coming out of your violin. Okay, and so again, even on the sones, you don't need to thrust and do all this, because eventually you're gonna hurt yourself. Really, I mean, that's where classical technique comes in, because classical technique helps you to protect yourself from injury. And even that, it's like I said, I'm sure I said it before, this instrument is hard enough as it is without any technique. I couldn't even imagine, I mean, I struggle enough with this instrument, and I try and apply technique 100%, 110% of the time. So that does it for this second class on mariachi violin section considerations. And this class, again, to recap, had to do with all of your right side. So that's your bow hold, the bow angles, and of course your bow usage and division. I hope you stayed with me through the whole thing. This is something, I'm sorry, looking at the wrong place over here. But this is something that's super important as far as your whole sound and your tone production. Again, remember, your bow is essentially it's 98% of your voice on the violin, or at least somewhere in the 90s of your voice on the violin, and of course, any other type of emotional aspects are going to be done with your left hand vibrato and all that kind of stuff. But I would say, up in the 90 percentiles of your sound is coming from your right side. So you want to make sure that you're in full control, and the only way to do so is to make sure that you are able to be loose and completely in control, but relaxed. You'll be much more successful in creating a sound that you want, because it can be very frustrating when you're not sounding the way that you want to sound. And there's too many factors in playing the violin that we don't have any control over necessarily, that affect our sound. So anything that we do have control over, we want to make sure that we do have control over it. Just make sure that again, these are considerations. Take them or leave them. But I sure hope they help. So we'll see you next time with the second part to this class, which is going to be different bowing styles and techniques. And again, you need to have a good grasp of this so that you can be able to apply them to the next class. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys made it through. And we'll see you soon. Thanks.